Kids are already asleep when Marian and Mingus watch the news on television. The story of the fairy is interesting enough, but there is a lot on their plates. Soon, Marian will have her biggest exhibition ever, and for the occasion, the couple will have to host her entire family. Additionally, the kids are asleep, and after they are taken away, time is freed for some intimacy. Unfortunately, both Marian's dad and their cat decide to intervene at this very moment. There can be no steamy intercourse between a couple when their cat eats its own furball nearby. Marian and Mingus are both coming from unsuccessful relationships, and both have their own children. It was Mingus who helped Marian during the worst times of her life. Dragged down by the negativity of her toxic relationship, Mingus was the one pulling her up again. Perhaps this is why, in 6 months, the two moved in together. As Marian suspects, her brief comment about her talent for making blow might also have been a factor, but let's not focus on that too much in this movie. The next morning is so packed with new information, new characters, and funny interactions that a separate book can be written about it. But to say it shortly, Marian's family exceeds all expectations. Gradually after meeting them, Mingus learns more and more about them, and gradually, he begins to become more and more afraid of himself. Everything starts out perfectly though. The father, Jeannot, smells of sweat and sausages he tried to smuggle. He kissed Mingus 3 times and cracked jokes left and right. The problems start when Marian's sister Rose introduces her boyfriend Manu to Mingus. The latter seems to be a total genius. Perhaps this is why he decides that it would be appropriate now to spill the truth that he was once Marian's boyfriend too. All starts descending on a downward spiral then. A mild argument takes place between Mingus and Marian about the ex, but unfortunately enough, this isn't the end of surprises and inconveniences for the man. When everyone leaves and he takes a business call, he suddenly sees Rose, hiding behind a door, asking him where the towels are stored. She was taking a shower, and now struggles to dry herself. As it happens, she is running around the apartment totally nude. It is a French custom, of course, nothing special. Perhaps this is what Mingus would also think if Rose did not try to seduce him afterward. As this unsuccessful attempt at seduction takes place, Jeannot is delighted to see his grandson. Becoming a kid himself, he is taken by the happiness of seeing such a handsome little relative, and seeing him, Marian feels that she should tell us a bit more about her father. As it turns out, he was born in Vietnam but, being an extreme pacifist, was shipped back to France. He met the love of his life in Paris and spent 30 years with her, until their demise separated them. This is the kind of love Marian never felt. Perhaps it is the times? Back then, to live happily ever after meant to live with your partner for 20 years until some fatal accident or terrible disease took your loved one abruptly. Now, however, things have changed. Ask any middle-aged man or woman and see what they think about it. In any case, the kind of love described is something Marian looks at in awe. Later that day, as Mingus works at a radio broadcasting station as always, his girlfriend and her family are at a gallery. The exhibition is just beginning to take shape. The performance is almost arranged when the French family enters the area and conquers the entire gallery. Manu takes the soul away from Marian's exhibition curator with his talkative attitude, as one very important detail is shared about the upcoming art show. As it turns out, Marian will sell her soul during the exhibition. Literally, she will sign a contract and give her soul away. The French immerse themselves in sightseeing then. After countless photos are taken and many fun memories are made, they get back home and are introduced to Willow, Mingus's daughter. Jeannot bonds with her immediately. He doesn't need to know English to communicate at all. His movements do the trick, but unfortunately, he won't be able to speak with them anymore if he doesn't take care of his back. He needs a massage, and as it happens, Mingus needs 2. They will go together. The young man goes through a hell of an experience at a Thai place. Trying his best to communicate with the old man, he is afraid that this mannerless senior will do everything in the wrong way, using his hands as much as he can. Mingus explains what he should do before going in for the massage. They have to first relax in a steam room, and based on everything we have learned about Jeannot so far, Mingus will surely go through a hell of a relaxing experience. After asking too many questions about Mingus' sex life, the man goes outside with nothing but a towel around his waist. In short, everything goes perfectly. Back at the house, the conflict between the sisters is gradually becoming more and more obvious. There are many differences between them, but still, Rose would love to have Marian back in France. When tears start falling on cut potatoes, the buzzing on the doorbell fills the apartment. If they were to come up with an alarm for an upcoming meteor shower, this is exactly what it would sound like. It is just too loud. Manu comes inside then. The more we look at the way he behaves, the more he seems like a ticking bomb. Speaking of the ticking bomb, the old man manages to bond with the Vietnamese people back at the Thai place. It is when they come back too that a delightful dinner is put together. The word delightful is, of course, a terrible exaggeration. A more correct way of putting it would be to say that it would have been a delightful dinner if a certain string of events hadn't taken place. The events that I mean are as follows. Manu and Rose continue to flirt with inappropriate people. Thanks to the perfect translation service from Manu, Jeannot understands nothing of Mingus. All the childhood traumas and sibling fights emerge between Rose and Marion, and the latter's son is accused of being autistic. If you think it's over, you are terribly mistaken. As a cherry on top, Manu invites a substance dealer inside the apartment and buys some in front of the children. Still, it could have been worse. After a long stare down between Mingus and Manu, an agreement is made that this will never happen again. The evening was bad enough, but it was nothing compared to the night. Initially, as a light beginning, Mingus is called a fake daddy again by Lulu. He and Marion are getting ready to sleep while talking about it, while Manu and Rose are outside, smoking in the air. The electric atmosphere of the city is pumping up both. There is no question about it. They won't go to sleep without causing some trouble. Everything starts in an elevator. As Mingus tells Marion all about the nude incident in the morning, the elevator is jammed for a moment, and the couple is stuck with another woman. Without paying her any heed, they eat pizza, relight their and, thinking she doesn't speak French, say all kinds of despicable things about her. The woman is furious. As it happens, she speaks fluent French. When the couple gets inside the apartment, Marion and Mingus are just beginning to find some peace and intimacy. Unfortunately for them, they won't get any peace tonight. Very soon, rhythmic banging starts in their bathroom, and the sound of Mingus's electric toothbrush slices the air. It is a total tragedy for the man. Manu and Rose are clearly using it for something very inappropriate. Horrifying dreams torment Mingus later the next morning. Awakening from a nightmare in which the French family was just disgusting, he stands up and finds the entire lot in his living room. Jeannot's expressions are as extreme as ever. Manu is taking care of his toenails in front of everybody, and the hungry kids are running around the table. In short, it is a peaceful and delightful sunny morning for the family, but a hellish nightmare for Mingus. Getting inside the bathroom, he throws away his toothbrush and comes outside again to make some coffee. Finally, the morning starts to get better. By some miracle, Jeannot actually understands one of his jokes, and the man starts laughing uncontrollably. The unfortunate catch, however, is that the joke goes on for far too long and grows into something that almost makes Mingus cry. The old man is just too familiar and expressive, and he has no sense of personal space either. Meanwhile, Marion is outside to get some baguettes for her family when she catches a glimpse of a pregnancy test advertisement. She stops and takes a better look. In the next scene, she meets the lady who was stuck in the elevator with Manu and Rose last night. Understandably enough, the woman is eager to express her anger as intensely as possible, but Marion is in no mood to let her do it without a price. After the woman is done spitting her threats and complaints, she tells her dramatically that she's suffering from a 4th-stage brain tumor and that her family is here to walk her to her grave. Once the elevator stops on her floor, she limps out sickly and slowly. This last part was probably not necessary, but it truly made the moment much heavier. Later that morning, this harmless lie turns into an incredibly complex play. But before that, Marion and Mingus have a small disagreement about their kids. As it seems, their relationship isn't fully devoid of unhelpful conversations, especially in these kinds of stressful moments. After Marion is done discussing the dark side of Mingus's daughter, she walks towards her family again and gets into the bathroom to see if she's pregnant. The test comes out negative. As it turns out, the headache, nausea, and lack of energy are coming from something else. Perhaps she should even be alarmed. But to be alarmed, she needs some time to think about it. And as it seems, she won't get any of it this morning. Coming outside, she hears a knocking on the door and watches as Mingus opens the door for a stranger. A man is standing in the doorway, saying that he's the surgeon's husband of the lady Marion just had a disagreement with in the elevator. He's here to check on her condition and see if he can help in any way. Mingus already knows that Marion lied to an enraged neighbor, but he doesn't know that the lie is this serious. Still angry at his girlfriend after the morning disagreement, he decides to embrace his new role fully. In an extremely tragic manner, he turns around and acts as if he's hearing about the brain tumor for the first time. His dramatism is so artificial that it's almost comical, but if you ask the surgeon, there's nothing comical in this situation. All he sees is a boyfriend who just learned that the love of his life will soon be taken away from him. What a tragedy. Still, Marion soon comes up with a way to send the doctor away. but unfortunately for her, Rose passes by at that very moment. Why is it so important? She is not wearing any underwear. As his eyes start acting on their own, the surgeon agrees to drink some coffee with the family, and so the theater show is dragged on. Within the course of the next few minutes, Mingus has a hell of a time. Marion is terribly tormented by her role as a dying person, and the doctor is too delighted to see the patient's CAT scans. He is not looking at the brain pictures, of course. There are far better things to look at around this apartment. When the brain surgeon finally leaves, Lulu makes a mess in his pants. It is when Marion, Rose, and Jeannot are gathered around him that Rose makes an unusual comment about the size of the kid's. She thinks it might be abnormal. It almost feels like she wants Marion's life to be miserable. With this, the time has come for everybody to leave the house. The French family goes to Marion's gym, and the man of the house gets a chance to sigh in relief. Finally, the chaos is gone. Understandably enough, the two creeps, Manu and Jeannot, have a great time in the gym. Rose and her one breast had a great time too. Naturally, the same cannot be said about poor Marion. As she tries to take care of her sister's breast situation, Mingus sits in his apartment alone. Here, we get a chance to understand a little more about his personality. As it turns out, he dreams of an opportunity to speak with the current president, Barack Obama. Even now, in the quiet of his apartment, he talks with a cardboard president and imagines that he's having an interesting conversation with him. Later that day, he is having lunch with Marion and her family in a crowded New York diner, when suddenly, a real chance of achieving his dream appears in front of him. His old friend, who's currently working for Obama, passes by. The two friends greet each other warmly, and of course, Mingus introduces his girlfriend and her whole family. It is then that the happiness-bringing information is told to him. As the man says the president is coming to New York soon to attend a press conference, and he can let him in, Mingus will finally be able to meet Obama. This is his lucky break. Unfortunately, however, the scene isn't over, and knowing the French family, Mingus shouldn't get so excited yet. As always, the people he's with make a terrible scene. An extremely inappropriate question is asked, manners are forgotten, mistakes are made, and most importantly, Marion and Rose start fighting in front of everybody. Loudly, they curse and throw hands at each other, until the chances of Mingus getting an entry into the press conference drop to zero. The friend makes up an excuse to leave, and Mingus gets a strong urge to speak with Marion as soon as possible. Quickly they get outside when the man lays out an ultimatum. He wants them out. Everybody, including Jeannot. He doesn't want to see their faces again. Marion knows that he's right about Minnie and Rose, but she hates the idea of letting her father go too. Knowing that he would suffer alone, she pleads with Mingus to let him stay. Manu and Rose can go to hell. Since compromise is one of the most important things in a committed relationship, Mingus agrees. Jeannot can stay, but all the others must leave. In the next scene, the French family is strolling the streets of New York, causing trouble, when Marion receives a call from her babysitter. As it is told to her, the woman has an emergency, and somebody must take the children from school. And so, Marion is forced to leave her family in the middle of this electric city. The day has just begun, and already it has been a terrible mess. Don't forget that her exhibition is tonight. It will truly be a soul-selling night. Getting inside a taxi, Marion feels a glimpse of relief after hearing her boyfriend's voice. But suddenly, Mingus starts publicly discussing his girlfriend's French family. To make everything even better for Marion, a girl calls the show and starts flirting with her boyfriend. Surprisingly enough, Mingus flirts back. And to make everything even better, Mingus's daughter Willow is wearing a bloody vampire costume when Marion gets to the kids to pick them up. The little girl's obsession with demise seems very serious. Here, before Marion and the kids walk away, the babysitter gives the young woman metaphysical but thoughtful advice. She should not sell her soul. Nobody should sell a soul. Naturally, Marion has no intention to follow this advice. She doesn't even believe in the existence of her soul. Why shouldn't she make some money off of it? What she does believe, however, is the fact that her boyfriend went a little overboard with that radio girl earlier that day. This is why she confronts him immediately after getting back home. Unusually enough, her harsh remarks have the opposite effect on Mingus. It was just a joke, and additionally, Marion's bones have become a lot bigger. As Jeannot and the kids talk nearby, a flame appears in the couple's hearts, and the request is given to send the kids and the grandpa away to the park. Trying to take care of it, Marion has a brief conversation with Jeannot when suddenly Rose comes inside the apartment with big news. As she says, Manu tried to roll a in front of a police station and got deported immediately. And so, the problem of Manu is taken care of. Rose, Jeannot, and the kids go to the park, and the couple finally gets some time alone. Embracing each other, they start letting the steam out. But sadly enough, the doorbell buzzes again. This time it is the doorbell repairman, and since the family really needs a new bell, they just cannot let him go. There is nothing Mingus can do. The intimacy will be postponed. Nothing special happens that afternoon, and the evening goes quite smoothly. The art show was delightful at first. The best way to describe it would be a collection of images that portray Marian with her past lovers in bed. No, actually, it would be more precise to say a collection of images that portray people simply lying in bed. At first glance, there is nothing special about them, but to Marian, they tell a tale of how every relationship evolves. This show is quite important for her, but unfortunately, the same cannot be said about the people who come to visit. The only positive thing that has happened at the exhibition so far is the meeting of Marian and Mingus's families. The two parties hit it off really quickly, and they managed to find commonalities in the blink of an eye. Frankly, it is a miracle that the French family actually managed to make a good first impression on somebody. When we set aside this positive detail, however, all that is left is one very unsuccessful art show, and this is all Marian can see. Suddenly, a ray of light appears in her heart. A vicious but very popular and renowned art critic, John Kelly, has just arrived to take a look at the exhibition. There is still some hope. The conversation between Marian and John Kelly is okay at its best, and it is when both are dishonest. The critic describes her art as mundane, pretty, and cute. There is no wonder Marian becomes gradually more and more furious. Seeing that she no longer has anything to lose, she lets all her disappointment and anger out, and pours it over the famous critic. Quickly, the curator of the exhibition jumps in to save the coverage, but of course it is already impossible. As is obvious, this exhibition needs something lively, something that would pump up the situation and make everything 100 times better. This is exactly what Willow does in the next scene, when she tries to sell some grass from Central Park to some Italian ladies. Thanks to Manu, she already knows how much foreigners love the New York grass, so it is only natural that she wants to be nice to the tourists. Thankfully, Mingus is quick to jump in and save the situation. To him, this small incident is much more important than Marian's art show. It is all Marian's ex-boyfriend's fault that his kid is selling grass at the exhibition, so understandably, Mingus wants to tell his girlfriend all about it. It is quite sad to see him fail to catch the anxiousness and confusion in her eyes. Rejecting to acknowledge her needs at this moment, he doesn't show any support to Marian, who clearly needs someone firm to lean on. And so, the girl is in this vulnerable state when finally, her soul is bought by some unknown person. The big announcement is made then, and the contract is signed over the sound of applause. Marian's soul was sold for only $5,000. The atmosphere is cheerful, but still, it is a heavy thing to watch Marian try to navigate through this situation. Now that this conceptual contract signing is over, people come up to her to shake her hand. Words of congratulations are thrown at her, but all she can think about is her unworthiness. She is a loser, an artist who couldn't even sell a single one of her pieces, so she had to sell her soul. She is a failure and a lousy photographer. She is messed up, and there is nothing that can bring her back from this mess. And to add to everything, she no longer has her soul. Completely overwhelmed by these internal thoughts, she gets out into the air and wanders away, when suddenly she runs into her neighbors. These are the people who think she has a brain tumor, and they are told to buy some of her work for future profit. As it is widely known, the dead artist is much more experienced than the living one. As it happens, this couple discusses Marian's condition and her future demise quite loudly, so others hear it as well. Interestingly enough, it is when Marian walks away that a group of people dashes inside her art show with the intention of buying everything before it's too late. The poor lady wanders through the busy streets alone. Aimless and soulless, she feels an immense weight dragging her down, when suddenly she finds herself in front of a massage place. To get some of the weight off, she enters and tries to clear her mind. When she comes out, she already knows what to do. It is as clear as day. To feel better, she must get her soul back. As it was already mentioned, the soul was bought by an anonymous party, but Marian's dedication is so strong that she quickly manages to get a meeting with him. In the next scene, she comes face to face with this man and realizes that it's none other than the famous actor Vincent Gallo. The atmosphere of the meeting perfectly matches the subject that is discussed. The personality of Vincent is quite mystical too. Bringing the conversation on philosophical rails, he tries to understand why Marian sold her soul and denies buying the fact that she doesn't believe in its existence. Meanwhile, Mingus starts to become more and more angry. Marian's battery is dead, so she doesn't answer any phone calls. Her boyfriend and family are already home. Mingus is furious, but no matter to what extent he loses his temper, he won't be able to talk to Marian. To make his mood even worse, Rose decides to explain. At this exact moment, Why the name Mingus is funny. It rhymes with cunnilingus, of course. Mingus is just delighted to hear this joke. Back to Marian, her conversation with Vincent gradually becomes more and more tense. Soon, as the importance of her soul is explained, she realizes that she made a terrible mistake. She wants her soul back, but as is now obvious, Vincent has no intention to give it back. It is now his, and he is saving it in a very private and safe place. When Marian learns what that place is, she finds herself overtaken by rage. Making a reactive movement, she reaches forward and starts throwing her hands at him to relieve the contract. As Vincent said, it is stored in his groin area. Coming back home, Marian is as vulnerable as ever. As an immeasurable sadness is painted on her face, she is immediately encountered with a barrage of harsh questions and judgments from Mingus. Trying to justify herself, Marian tells him all about her terrible night. She tells him about the way her meeting with Vincent Gallo ended as well. We didn't see it firsthand, but now we learn that during the fight for the contract, the man punched her in the belly. Unfortunately, it was he who won the fight. And to add to everything, he seems to have eaten it as well. At this moment, all Marian needs is a hug, and a very simple sentence such as, "Your soul cannot be eaten by another individual," or, "Your soul is still with you, it cannot be sold." Unfortunately though, Mingus is so angry at her that he fails to recognize these needs. Now that this crazy story is told to him, he is catching himself, thinking that his girlfriend has completely changed her mind. Additionally, he doesn't really like the image of his girlfriend reaching for another man's groin on the floor of some dark restaurant. This is why he decided to sleep in his office and not in his bed tonight. After Mingus leaves, Marian feels all alone, but suddenly she realizes that her son is sleeping in her bed. Knowing this, the endurance of the pain she feels is much easier. The latest that she tells him always ends with a happily ever after. There is no wonder that they always cut the stories in those parts. After the happy ending, life begins, and within that life, things much scarier than dragons are encountered. In this life, you are alone. There is a good reason why Marian doesn't believe in the existence of her soul. If the soul exists, then there is probably an afterlife too. And if there was an afterlife, her mother would have already reached out. Still, in this impossible and difficult situation, something meaningful can be found. And no, I do not mean incredible wealth. Although, thanks to her lie, Marian is already a millionaire. Later the next morning, Marian, Rose, and Jeannot go to Central Park, while Mingus stays at home. While the family tries to express their support for Marian, Mingus tries to clear his mind while talking with the cardboard Obama. It is in the conversation with him that he slowly realizes just how much he loves Marian. Starting out with the intention of justifying his anger, he soon realizes that he has overreacted. He no longer wants to break up. Now he will take a piss and go to his love at Central Park. Raising the seat in the next scene, he suddenly notices something very unexpected. There is a pregnancy test in the bin, and it is positive. When Mingus arrives at the park, he will have something very important to convey to Marian. Meanwhile, the girl notices a pigeon stuck on the roof of the Belvedere Castle. If there is something she needs to do right now, it is to save this unfortunate animal from the claws of demise. According to one Vietnamese custom, one has to release a trapped animal in order to let go of someone who has perished. This is exactly why Marian is so determined to climb the roof now. And so, it is when she's engaged in this extremely dangerous activity that the father of her future child appears beneath, screaming in total terror that they are going to have a little Obama. Once the pigeon is released, Marian falls down, but fortunately, she has 6 hands reaching out to help her out. All wraps up nicely then. Mingus, Marian, Rose, and Jeannot are taken to a police station, together with the policeman that is responsible for it. Rose starts a romance and moves to Paris. And Jeannot starts living in New York to be closer to Marian and her new family. And yes, I barely forgot, all the villains of the story are given a beautiful gift from a certain pigeon that sunny morning. Now there's a happy ending.